making mistakes and it's kind of public.
Many higher level executives refuse to do it. What will my bosses think or my coworkers think?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Shift Show, the podcast that helps ambitious professionals navigate the changing world of work with clarity, confidence, and today, 100%, we're going to have a few laughs along the way. Today's guest is my friend, Anna Morgan. She is a recruiter, a career coach, and founder of Career BFF. Anna has helped, it's got to be at least thousands of people by now, right?
Yes, many.
Yeah, absolutely. Thousands of job seekers cut through the noise, including myself, building careers they actually want and show up with confidence, both online and in interviews. I am so privileged to have you here to speak with us. If you have ever wondered how to navigate the job market without selling your soul, this conversation is definitely for you. Anna, welcome.
Hi.
I'm so delighted to have you.
Well, this is just so funny how the world works and how the dots connect and how, we take virtual relationships into, human relationships and then back to digital. So here we are.
I know, 100%. So I feel like in transparency, we have to tell people how we sort of met.
Oh, we don't want to leave them on that little cliffhanger. Let's go.
So Anna actually sourced me for a candidate. We won't name the company, but it sourced me for a role. And, it was really interesting. I mean, she showed up so much as just her authentic self and even how I experienced her here as the recruiter. And we had a really honest conversation. I had a great job. I wasn't quite ready, to leave at the time. And it was so interesting. I had an interview with Anna. We were like, not the right fit for me, had a very frank conversation.
And I was very honest and I gave feedback.
100%, right? Very transparent. No.
Okay. Was I responsive?
You were very responsive. You did not ghost me. You gave me good advisement, right? Like, I think it was like, I asked for your opinion. I trusted you.
I gave it to you and you didn't sue me. So we're still friends.
No, you were extremely consultative.
Thank you.
The next day you quit your job.
Wait, after. Like literally the next day I quit.
I literally, it was
or
literally
the next day I made the post that I'm officially a corporate dropout.
That is what you did. Yeah.
So funny.
It was a very short period. And I was like, well, Rachel, you interview with the recruiter and she quits. Good job, Rachel.
I mean, and there's a whole nother story about that piece that I want to share with your audience about job seeking and kind of how to solve that. But, what happened next was actually, a savvy and smart thing as a passive job seeker that you did.
Oh, I did. Yeah. So for me, it was very obvious how good of a recruiter you were. And I was like, oh, I love her. Click. Let's connect on LinkedIn.
Stay in touch. Yeah.
I know. And that's how I knew, you were making these transitions. And then I feel like I was follower number one on getting to watch the Career BFF journey. Mm-hmm. And you and I connected at a conference earlier this year. I walked out of the ladies' room and you were sitting on a bench right in front of me. And all I did was
you walk out the door and I was sitting directly across from that door.
It was hilarious. So I walked up and was just like, I am here. Give me a hug.
And I see this bright, bold, beautiful woman walk out of the restroom. And I'm like, I know she recognizes me and I'm in conversation with a pretty important person. And, I'm trying to balance the energy and also think about how do I know her? Because then I was like candidate, client, prospect, that's all these micro thoughts that are going through your brain in that moment. And then I don't know, then it clicked and I was like, oh, I've seen her in the comments. And then, then we hugged and then you told me about quitting and I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It was so funny. And then we were like, beep, 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 beep. And that person was just like, bye.
Well, I did apologize to him. I wasn't rude.
It was
he
exactly
he
what
was
was
lovely.
supposed to happen. Yeah.
Yes. As a recruiter, how do you feel when candidates connect with you online or want to stay connected?
I always want to focus on working smarter rather than harder, right? And I've seen time and time again how, you know, a transaction ends up being a relationship, right? Like what has happened and evolved with our friendship. I always advise people, like, you don't want to be creepy, right? And you also have to be self aware on the depth and connection of the conversation that you had with that individual, right? If you felt like it was distant, kind of cold, might not go anywhere, or if you didn't have necessarily like the warm and fuzzies to, kind of peel back those layers, right? Because I feel like there's a high level screen and then there's kind of like, let's take off the blazers, like relax and get into it, because taking a job is a life decision. Like, let's not try to make it a light conversation, because it's not. And the work that we do to, find the ideal talent for our hiring teams in the business is complex, right? How did we have that conversation and then make decisions based on that? So if it was like a more distant conversation, then I would still connect on LinkedIn and really focus on ways to show credibility and support and engagement with that particular recruiter, so that you can kind of earn the trust to then go into the DMs and, ask or deepen that relationship in some way.
Oh, that's a great tip. So
Sometimes
even
it's a little creepy if it's on Facebook, but I prefer to build, like, I'll add more peers on Facebook versus candidates, unless I've placed the candidate. And, then you pretty much become friends, I feel like, if you're a good recruiter. So,
actually that is really true. So I love that. Engaging right on the right platform in the right way, right? Based on your relationship.
mhm.
I definitely think that's a good one. Because I do think though sometimes people just put up those barriers. I mean, worst case scenario, they're just gonna say no, not ready to connect on this platform or whatever. But
Yeah, I mean, and
at
the
least
worst is
try.
they can
Yeah.
ignore it. But I always encourage people to take the action that you hope others will take, right? So, if you know that this recruiter is probably more maybe of an influencer, or you just get a sense that he or she like knows their stuff and is well connected, and maybe they have focused on that particular niche in, engineering, and you're an engineer, right? Then that's a higher ROI. That's a, connection that you want to focus, pouring a little bit more into.
While I have you here, so I want to talk a little bit about Career BFF and sort of the brand you've also built just for yourself. But can we talk a little bit about just the job market, how
Yes.
wild it's been, and
Ugh.
recruiting hell is a place you should not hang out
Oh, I don't even,
online.
I'm glad actually I don't go there, because sometimes I feel like if you're not in the right company, and I think this is exactly my brand, the Career BFF vibe, where, I might be at a table with a bunch of our peers, all different levels, IC, leadership, managers, and I am such the eternal optimist, when it comes to, how we are evolving and what's changing and what's possible. Instead of like, AI is going to take all our jobs, I'm over here being like, AI is going to make us the most loved employees in the corporate work world,
Well,
because it
if you're adopting, absolutely, I hope.
amplifies really the genius and the way we solve problems and business problems, all the things with the work that we do. And there's no silver bullet, right, for how we recruit or how you job search, but it is wild out there. You always have these pendulum swings of everyone's hiring, recruiters, and what was that, 2022, and then now, it's like, where are all the recruiters? But inevitably it's all going to come back. I think what the job seeker kind of candidate profile in our industry of people leaders is definitely changing. So as a job seeker, if you're a job seeker in, people leadership, talent acquisition, talent development, really this is the time to make sure that, you're continuing to build all of those skills, both in communication and AI, tech tools, just staying abreast of all of that, which is where you will then be able to fast track, I think, opportunities and conversations, because you're either going to be in those spaces or be qualified to be there,
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Is there anything unique that you're seeing that just most people don't realize?
The number one really like pain point that I hear from our peers when I do job search strategy calls with folks is, I haven't looked for a job in over 5 years. Like, what's changed? This is how I used to apply, or I never had to apply because I just would be tapped on the shoulder, for my next opportunity. Not sure how to leverage LinkedIn, feel overwhelmed with all the noise and opinions, especially on those LinkedIn streets. And they are, really suffering with imposter syndrome and trying to figure out how to stay relevant. And that's kind of a perfect storm, especially for any job seekers that are a little more experienced, kind of in that, Gen X and older area has been interesting, but also, our millennials and Gen Z and younger also have their unique set of challenges coming into this, job search market. I think for any level, investing in LinkedIn and community building and just kind of figuring it out. I mean, you've complimented me on how I've built my brand, and, it's purely like trial and error. And, that concept of just building the airplane while you're flying it and then sharing along the way, I think like that's part of what gives people that safety feeling with me, is that I really don't sugarcoat it. I mean, I think there's one post where it's like I woke up and it's like squishy face and I have my snow cap on and like no makeup. And I'm like, this is entrepreneurship, It's like not glamorous. We live in a world that is so much about instant gratification. And, it's like, not every post is going to go viral. Not every post is going to book and close that sales call for you, And
not every application is going to get you the job. I mean,
no.
Yeah.
And it's also like balance in the job search. So it comes down to like radical honesty with ourselves and then dedicating the right time. So if you find yourself ignited and in all the resume edits and, just spending so much time in the analysis paralysis of the cover letters and the resume, well, what else are you doing? Checking my inbox a lot. What else? And there's so much more you can be doing. It's like a three-pronged stool. Applications. I hire candidates off of applications all the time. So do keep applying.
Okay, good to know.
Don't be a jerk and apply to jobs that for sure that you're not, qualified for. I don't advise using AI like that in your job search to mass apply. I think it makes you look like a lazy, spammy job seeker. And the way I think about it, if that's how you operate to get the result you want, it's not necessarily working smarter rather than harder. I would rather see you using AI and tech to, customize an outreach message, to build an automated messaging drip campaign for your ideal hiring manager, right? Mm-hmm. Stuff like that.
Customize your resume even. I mean, yeah.
Exactly. And, the resume is a vehicle for the conversation. Sometimes I would rather the resume be the caboose to the train. And you have such a great brand and presence, and you have so many inbound leads. You have 1, first right of refusal. 2, you have options.
That's great.
And then 3, you're not chasing and having to like prove your worth. That is the greatest ROI that people get from consistency, showing up imperfectly perfect. Yeah. And, testing things out essentially.
So I'm hearing, so you said 3 leg stools. So we've got kind of that LinkedIn brand optimization. We've got the resume and
3-pronged stool. So apply. we hire people on applications, then building your digital brand, right? I'm always going to champion LinkedIn first and then play around with the other platforms that you enjoy. And, I try to create for LinkedIn. And then if it works on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, then repurpose it. And then the third is, in person community. It's also that learning. Are you doing LinkedIn Learning, Coursera's? Are you volunteering? Are you going to conferences? And then being very strategic in those actions. I believe we're all in sales.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great point.
And, if you don't believe whether you're, a job seeker is in charge of selling themselves. And so, I think it's very difficult for them to get in that mindset of, I'm a marketer. How do I take myself, my go-to-market strategy for Anna Morgan looking for a job? What makes that so much easier is if they have that presence, right? And they have that consistency where it's just a little enough that you see Anna Morgan's name in the feed, in the comments. And, that's also the reason I got rehired so many times, is because I guarantee those hiring managers could not stop seeing my mug on LinkedIn. And they're like, we need Anna back. There's nobody like Anna that can staff those, positions on my team.
That's great.
And that's powerful, right? There's a price tag that comes with that, expertise and thought leadership. It can do so much for you. I mean, I remember like back in the office, I'd have loose connections that I worked with walk by my cube and be like, Anna, I love what you're doing on LinkedIn. And, I would be like, oh, I didn't even know we were connected. And those relationships ended up resulting in client referrals or ended up being clients. I mean, it's just, sometimes it's difficult to connect those dots, right? So,
love that. So, for professionals, like that also may look like go get some speaking events and share those out there, right? Establishing credibility and then, as the brand.
Or by, building engagement and, testing things out on LinkedIn, because you don't have to be a creator on LinkedIn. You don't have to have a live show. You don't have to have a podcast or even a newsletter to get noticed and have that top of mind awareness on LinkedIn that really can fast track your job search. So, I would say the majority of people, come back to LinkedIn when they're in oh shit job search. My goal when I coach in this space is that, not only have I given them the tools in the tool belt to get that fast track job opportunity, but then a foundation of understanding around personal branding and how to do it in a sustainable way so that they have that career insurance when they have an unexpected, career fender bender of sorts.
Love that.
To then withdraw that social currency and say, hey, LinkedIn community, I got laid off. Here's what I've done. These are my successes. This is, what I'm doing now. Thanks for following along and being part of this. And, when I did that type of post in 2020, it generated multiple job offers, speaking engagements, paid workshops, other collaborations. I mean, it just blew up. And I just couldn't have expected that, by simply taking intentional time on LinkedIn every single day.
Well, and so when you needed it, you could kind of go to the social currency bank, right? So it's easier to, if you have that professional network, to kind of go to it as opposed to having to build it again. So, right, if you think your job is at risk.
I guarantee if everyone just like takes a moment and thinks maybe that's more active on LinkedIn, and then all of a sudden you see that past coworker or, someone that pretty well that all of a sudden reappears on the platform in an open to work banner in a frenzy of panic and almost, and I understand also there's a huge amount of anxiety for some people that comes with announcing a public job search and being open to work. Many higher level executives like refuse to do it because they feel like it's damaging to their reputation, right?
Yeah.
And if you're in a public search, let people know.
Mm-hmm.
But, and you might see that post and you're like, oh, wow. And so it's almost jarring. And then you think, not necessarily you think that, but you pause and think, like, do I want to pour into energy to serve that person when they've been, MIA for 4 years?
That's interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you've started building this community of supportive people, and then say, I make a post like, hey, something's happened in my family. I've closed my business. I'm looking for a corporate role, because you have been engaging in the comments, or I had been engaging in your content, you would be more inclined to focus your energy on that connection versus the cold, help me, spammy energy of,
Someone, yeah.
I didn't need you before, but I need you now, kind of energy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I explained that well.
No, I understand what you mean. I mean,
It's basically about like earning the right to ask your community for that support, right?
Yeah.
And you will so much more be empowered and be able to, again, fast track those conversations if you have built that trust and credibility, over time.
So I was talking to a friend of mine recently. We was going through her resume, and she was, even doing some work on kind of like, what is my positioning in the market and some of that. And, I was talking with her a little bit about networking, and her comment back to me was, but Rachel, you're extroverted, right? What do you say to the introverts, and how do you help them kind of build some comfort in that, right? Even putting things out publicly may feel very vulnerable.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you would be so proud. I met a lovely woman at this most recent conference, and she's an early career recruiter, LGBTQ, for a big healthcare company, definitely a minority kind of in that space. And the next day, I see that she shared ERE and shared also about her social anxiety, which we had like a whole conversation around, how do I help people solve that in conferences? Because I'm noodling on this new idea around resources to be a conference career BFF, because many of us end up going to conferences by ourselves. There's a combination of introverts and extroverts. And so is there a way that I could find Anna Morgans for those introverts at these in-person events to, kind of make
I love
the
that.
experience.
Take an extrovert, make them your friend.
Exactly. I mean, at Transform, I'm much more extroverted than she is. So we balance each other nicely. And I was able to, do different things that helped her accomplish her goals of why she was there. So, I think it's about starting slow and trusting yourself in that process. But your question specifically was networking for introverts, right? I tend to attract that social media introvert, that lurker, and I would just keep it simple. So 2 things for, virtual introverts is carve out intentional time on LinkedIn. 1, add maybe 5 to 10 new connections a day, and don't overly think it. It doesn't have to be at your ideal company, doesn't have to be a past coworker. It can be just super fun, cool human beings that you just resonate with. That's what I focused on as I was building originally, because I don't necessarily want all job seekers or all recruiters. Like, I want to be here to learn a variety of different things. So just start with adding people, right? And I would focus on looking at people that are active on the platform, because no purpose in adding a bunch of just profile names that never come around, right? Focus on that. And then I would say comment. I started super, super basic, like, thanks for sharing, great post, commenting for reach. I used a lot of emojis at first. And then over time, like, I started to get a little braver, and even though I'm extroverted in person, I have a lot of insecurity around writing. I failed English 101 twice in college. I have ADHD, I have a processing issue. And so I was terrified. I also was insecure, and I was like, well, what if I get blasted? What if someone's mean to me in the comments? Like, I wear my heart on my sleeve, but I just kept with it. 10 comments a day and 10 new connections. And then I found, wow, I have something to say about cover letters or yoga for mental health or alcoholism in the workplace. And I then, was like, wow, okay, it was so much easier to just let my vibe and my energy flow in the comments without being judged. And then once I had some success from that, I'd get a message and be like, oh, I saw what you said in the comments on Rachel's post. Let's keep the conversation going.
Love
And
that.
that's powerful. So when people see you having public conversations in the comments, they're going to trust to have private conversations with you in the DMs.
Oh, that's a
So
good
kind of
point.
like we were talking about before, the social currency,
Mm-hmm.
and people come to LinkedIn and they're like, but Anna, it's so like, dim influencer and self-promotional. It's a
People are
mind.
very uncomfortable. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, because people are uncomfortable asking for help. They think they're going to be judged. And I will tell you, over my career, I mean, I joined LinkedIn in 2006. I started really kind of growing in 2018, 19 and 20. Every single person has always been either, I love what you're sharing, I've learned so much, I'm inspired by what you're doing. One boss was simply intimidated by LinkedIn. And that was the one experience that was like negative, but there was so much more wrapped up in that was not LinkedIn. So introverts, building community, starting slow, like build that muscle. You do that, and then, plan on going to some in-person events where then I try to plan, what do I want to get out of this? Like, why am I going to this conference? And for introverts, if you're going to an in-person thing, and this is just social anxiety is not your gig, if you can find any way to bring someone as one, get that approval for that. And then two, if there's an RSVP list where people say like they're attending that event on LinkedIn or some event, I would go through there and see if you know anyone or
Oh,
someone
that's a
that
great tactic.
you can
Yeah.
warm up a relationship with. And once you've been kind of running the conference circuit for a while, then, you start to have some friends where I could message you and be like, are you going to RecFest? Or are you coming to Evolve 2026? By the way, I'm having a conference in January next year, and I would love to have all the recruiters come to Atlanta and TA leaders. So
Good plug.
thank
That'll be
you.
an awesome one. Absolutely. In fact, if we can link to like that in the show notes, right? Do you have a website for that yet?
I do. I have the Evolve
Perfect.
2026 wait list, and I just did a recap in my latest newsletter. And probably next week, I'll start the next edition where I'm going to share a little bit more on what we learned from the speakers and kind of more about the behind the scenes planning. Yes, Rona, Perceptible Studios. She is kind of like a video agency exclusive for people leadership that want to get into video. And I was one of her beta test clients and now a paying client. I love how she does what she does. And we had a
Yeah,
lot of
she's got
fun
some good stuff.
being
Hmm.
her content creator assistant.
I
So,
love that. Love that. Well, you
yeah.
guys have a really good partnership, I think, for
Oh, and
sure.
here's another tip for introverts. So,
Hmm.
the mindset piece of it being too, self-promotional or, what will my bosses think or my coworkers think is that, as you start building on LinkedIn, I tell people to think about like what would have been supportive or igniting or educational for you as you were coming up in your career, and treat LinkedIn as an educational platform, a virtual opportunity to be a network or a mentor, or just be of service. Like show up and just focus on loving on others and supporting others and celebrating others. Like one thing to know about LinkedIn is any reason to celebrate anything, whether it's a birthday, a new job, a baby, whatever. LinkedIn is very generous algorithm wise to celebratory content. So that's also a way, if you are a commenter, you can go through the comments, and that's a great place to add connections, because those people are commenting on the same thought, industry relevant topic, meaning you're likely going to have more synergy anyway because you're in the same place virtually, kind of like you, as if you were in the same place at a conference, right? And over time, you might have some unfortunate situations, but for the most part, I've found LinkedIn to be overly generous. And we have to remember that we command our experience on LinkedIn. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that once you get a little more comfortable with a platform.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
And I'll tell you, you're not at the mercy of your newsfeed.
Well, and you mentioned imposter syndrome, right? I particularly, as I started podcasting, I was extremely uncomfortable. And there's definitely an element of, you may miss you, and you talked about this a little bit, but like you're making mistakes and it's kind of public. And part of this, you're all learning about how to network. You're, maybe sharing things you've recently learned, right? It's uncomfortable. I did create a Spotify playlist, and I'll link to that too. That's just like for imposter syndrome. And between it's really helped me get through that. And fortunately, I didn't suffer from it too long, but I was active work.
Yeah.
To get through it.
And it takes time. I think it's also, it's tough. And it also is just like trusting that you are the shit and you are equally qualified to be doing this. And for me, that's why a lot of times I go to these conferences, so that, because entrepreneurship is lonely, right? And so, just to do that market research and also just be inspired by those that are 5 years ahead of me, like, had dinner with some new connections, and I was like, wow, this guy's built kind of an agency that I think looks like what I might want to do down the line. And so that was a rich conversation, and now a great connection where, we can support each other in the future. So yeah, I totally forgot.
Are there any particular mistakes you see people making? Not doing it.
Yeah, not doing it, right? I think recruiters that are job seeking and, TA leaders, like, you're just as guilty as job seekers of not having updated relevant information on your profile. Leveraging your cover image, you now can have a slide deck and use that as a way to sell yourself and amplify your brand. Have an updated profile picture. Again, people compliment me greatly that my digital brand is exactly like I'm in person. I'm a little more fun in person.
It is very true. No, you're fun. You're fun online too.
But if I had a 10-year-old picture of me with a bob and like honey-colored hair, people might not recognize me.
Yeah. No, well, you were talking through kind of the mistakes that
Oh, mistakes. Okay, so not having an updated photo. A lot of times, especially people leaders, they forget to update in their experience section. Say I worked for Evolve Events, right? And in that experience section, I'm describing Evolve Events, the company, and why you want to work with us, versus being on the job search talking about, as the director of events, this was my goal, and here's a couple standout accomplishments in that role. Like, stop marketing for your past employer and start telling the story of the impact that you made, right? I would say that maybe they didn't accept those connection requests after, recruiter screens, or maybe they didn't get them. It's wild to me to think that we're sourcing on LinkedIn with dinosaur profiles. Like, I'm sure your response rate is probably not as high as it could be, right? So those little things, not asking for recommendations, forgetting to update your skills. Like, I looked back
make
at
sure
mine
you
a
can
couple
show
months
up
ago, and I was like, oh, faxing is super relevant in 2025, or it might as well have like AOL and MySpace on there.
Well,
so update your skills.
People don't realize though, like if you haven't been in the systems or sourced, I mean, they don't realize that, that about me section, or you can add different sections in your LinkedIn profile. You can, that'll allow you to show up.
Certifications, awards, volunteer work,
Mm-hmm.
even like interest, right? Like this is one of the things from a relationship building, emotional intelligence kind of standpoint. I think a lot of us generation wise are struggling with, we forgot how to pay attention and build those relationships where, it's like, oh, I love that red lamp behind you. You used to look at the things in people's offices, or, that were talking points where it's like, clearly, Anna, you love dogs, you psycho, they're all over your wall. But that's a commonality that builds trust and is a great kind of talking point. So, I tell people, don't be afraid to like bring your profile to life. And remember, your profile is like welcoming someone to your back porch to have a lemonade, a coffee, or a glass of wine, right? Talk directly to the person. Don't say, Anna Morgan is an old ass recruiter that's been doing this, da 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 da. Like, I'd be like, welcome to the career, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Here's a little about me. This is what I've done. This is who I serve. This is what people say about me. And then the close. How do you want people to engage with you on the platform? Tell them. DM me, message me, open to connection, here to network with HR business partners. Like, you can be as specific as you want, but you're going to have a higher probability of building that relationship if you're clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, and the clarity, right? I think a lot of times people don't think about who is that target audience. What is the kind of job that I want in the future?
Mm-hmm.
If you're casting your net too wide, you're not going to
Yeah.
show up in some of these searches and things like that.
Right. And you could cast your net wider by working smarter rather than harder, building some relationships with some, qualified, top-notch agency recruiters or individual recruiters or corporate recruiters. Focus on working those relationships, right? Like in your target list, or focusing on them from an engagement strategy versus spamming. I think the other thing that drives, I guess I won't speak for all recruiters, but when you're DMing a recruiter, say you see that I posted that particular role. And if you've never had any communication with that recruiter, go to their past post or comments and get in those first, right? And why? Because if I'm playing around in your comment playground, Rachel, if you're my ideal hiring manager or, recruiter, I want you to then see my name, right? Building that trust. So then when I come into the DMs, you're like, why do I know Anna Morgan's name? Oh, she made that really nice comment. And then I can say, hey, Rachel, I really loved your post about the launch of your podcast. I gave you a rating, blah, blah, blah. Or it could be something so simple that's, a relatable bridge builder, from your engagement, content, or profile. And this is my rebel energy. I would not even say anything in that first message about applying to the role or wanting a job at that company. Get out of the transaction. Focus on the long-term game. And if you can focus on that connection first, then they go to your profile and you see, wow, Anna's been a recruiter for 15 years. She's done agencies, she's done corporate, she's retail. Holy shit. Holy cow, Anna Morgan's exactly what I need. And then the energy changes. And I go from the puppy behind the glass saying, Rachel, please hire me. I'm so cute and cuddly, and I promise I won't pee on your floor, to being that, top dog, purebred, princess poodle, French bulldog that everyone wants, that you're putting in bids and competing with Lady Gaga for that next great candidate.
The best analogy ever.
But it's true. It's totally true that you go from being the look at me to then being the desired and the hunted and the prioritized, right?
So Anna, We're through most
I
of my
know.
questions. You
We
have
we
hit
could
all
do
of
like a
my lines.
7-hour podcast.
No, this has been amazing and such a rich
Oh, thank
like
you.
conversation. I'm really like even thinking about, how do I put some of this in like some frameworks for people to really take some action on?
Yeah, if you do, let me know. Then I can put it in my
Absolutely.
course.
Absolutely would be happy to collaborate with you on that. But what I
Yeah,
I
we are
love,
definitely going to be doing some fun stuff together. So,
you've got a great toolkit. I mean, and what I love most about your perspective is it's just so real, right? You're not
well, and
sugarcoating
I mean, we
anything.
try to like put all these fancy words to things, and it's like,
Mm.
also around like my career BFF method, right? If you have the clarity, and then you can build and focus on your brand is the B. And if you do that, then you're going to be fast tracking opportunities and conversations. And once you
Mm.
do that and you start implementing those tools in your tool belt, you are now future proofing your career because you have that clarity, you built the brand, you've had those conversations, you have that top of mind awareness, and then now you're in that 5%. You
Love
are
that.
being the desired, you have options. And my passion is elevating our community and our industry and being able to unlock really my lived experience through my own journey of you know just all the roller coaster career events, because
Yeah.
um it's relatable. And like I said, I show up as the woman that I needed 10 years ago and try to be of maximum service in that way, because there's no way I'm going to be able to share that throughout my life of what I've learned and where I've failed and all the things. And I also feel like sometimes social media is also like, how do you want to leave the world? Like, what does that legacy look like too? And I think there's been a lot of conversations of more senior folks, which is so crazy being, 50 and in this industry for 20 years, a focus on how are we leaving this industry better than it was when we began, and how are we serving younger communities as they come up in people leadership. So
Isn't it interesting when you start to like you're the
start to be
experienced one?
that person that was like, when I was young and we had to ride our bike to, uh, I was like,
That's a
I am now my mom,
well,
but
it's
way cooler.
okay. It's a privilege to be able
Yeah,
to do that for sure.
yeah.
Well, you're so just practical and
Thank
grounded and
you.
full of heart, you know. So tell me, where can people find you?
Yes, I spend the most of my time on LinkedIn, and
Hmm.
I am opening my calendar for a couple one-on-one coaching clients. So I, first love to coach job seekers that are in the people leadership space. So whether you're an entry-level recruiter or sourcer, or you're an executive, talent and HR leader, that is kind of my first kind of focus from coaching. And then as a generalist, I can certainly coach anyone from early career IT sales over to executive. And then I play around on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. You're welcome to follow me there. And then we'll share in the the show notes the Evolve conference waitlist information and
Okay.
recap. So more of that coming.
And
And
Evolve is mostly for talent acquisition folks.
I need to make a final decision on that. you
Still
know,
designing, still in
I
design.
feel like, in honestly, like to help solve kind of the HR versus talent thing, that putting them in
Mm.
the room and forcing them to play together might be the best solution. But I don't know. There's a whole debate going on around like talent, TA and TD and T ops and HR. And it feels
Mm.
like, who's on first.
Well,
So
it definitely works better when everyone
did I answer your question?
collaborates
So
together.
I would
You did,
say,
yeah.
if you're in any kind of people leadership, get into the Evolve movement and then stay tuned, because if you're an early evolver, there's certainly perks and benefits to that. So,
Awesome. Awesome.
yeah.
And I will link to your website as well in the show notes so folks can find you that way for sure.
Yeah, the website's going under construction soon, hopefully. But,
For Career BFF or Evolve? Both.
Well, it's all under AnnaMorganCareerBFF.com is
Okay.
the website. So, but I'm going to be doing a little refresh hopefully here soon. So I'm tired of doing my own website. You know how
I
that
don't
goes.
blame you. It's hard.
It
Having
is
just
hard.
done one, I was like, whoa.
So yeah. So, well, until we, meet again in real life, but I think we said we were going to try to do some maybe live shows on LinkedIn too. So
Yeah, I really
hopefully,
want to experiment with that for sure. Do some
awesome.
myth busting and
Well,
help.
congratulations to you on launching the show, and
Thank
I hope
you.
I have added value to your listeners.
Oh,
And uh,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I just want to thank kind of everybody also for listening. If this conversation lit a fire under you or just gave you a breath of relief, your next move, we will have some pretty robust actually show notes with links, resources there. I also have been playing with just a resume template. It's really built for kind of more senior roles, but have
why?
been testing that. I
Yeah.
find people don't know how to make a resume.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, and
Just
that's
in
why
the
there's
end.
all this like, kerfuffle on, how much do you pay for a resume? And yeah, that's a whole nother conversation around the resume. But yes,
Yeah.
it is difficult. I think a template is awesome. I think complementing a template by having a sounding board to help get the relevant information out is
Hmm.
key. That's the thing that
Absolutely.
I find is most valuable with my clients, to really ask the right questions, because we're so close to what we've done. And if you haven't done a good job of tracking your wins and have a brag folder and social proof, or, tracked your KPIs, it takes a little digging
So hard
and
to put it together.
prompting
Absolutely.
to do that. So that's a whole nother kind of side note for resilience building and fighting imposter syndrome and evolving and staying relevant in this industry is, you know, keeping track of those types of assets, because they're just as
Good tip.
important as the resume.
Hmm.
Because we're all going to have that day where I want to pick up the phone and call you, Rachel, and be like, I can't do anything right. I don't know who I am or what I'm
Hmm.
good at. Nobody's going to hire me, and I want to light it all on fire. Right. And
Yeah.
before I make that crazy phone call, but I probably will make that crazy phone call, is that I can open up my love folder and see all the job seekers that I've changed their lives, or,
Love
even
that.
think back to maybe a screenshot you sent me, or something that,
Hmm.
just reminds you, like, oh, kind of brings you back to center and reminds you of your purpose and why you're here, and to just
Great best practice.
keep
That
going.
absolutely.
And that's hard for people leaders, because why? We're terrible about putting that oxygen mask on ourselves. And we're
Hmm.
like, oh, we got this job. We got 60 positions to fill. And this is a cool company. And I'm going to take care of everybody here. And I'm going to burn out. And then I'm going to have no job. And, it just exacerbates this whole, ripple effect of, a mess for us if you don't take, those little micro self care, career insurance building actions to really set you up for success when you are going into the job search. And that also helps you build your resume
Hmm. It really
much
does.
easier.
That's a
Mm,
great point. And that motivation to keep you going when it gets hard, for sure.
yeah.
Absolutely.
As
Well,
soon
if
as you
you,
get your job,
oh,
you're on to the next search. So,
right. Absolutely. If you love this episode, please make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm on YouTube as well with this. Follow Anna's channel for sure, and then share this with someone who's stuck in a job search. Right, and that
yes.
limbo is
So,
such a tough
how we
thing.
say help, share
Pay
this
it
with someone in the
forward.
job search. Yeah,
Yeah.
be a career BFF, because
Hmm.
a career BFF is a connector, a giver, and, someone who, knows there's enough to go around, focuses on that collaboration over competition, and be the person that you will need when you're behind the desk, looking for that job.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Well, this
yeah.
is Rachel and Anna with the Shift Show, and we'll see you guys next time.